So, if you are walking into a new career, especially one that is high stakes, high stress, and intensely demanding like nursing, those first 2 years are really the ultimate trial by
And
fire.
absolutely.
They're often described not just as a learning curve, but as a vertical cliff face that you have to scale while also, providing critical care.
That analogy is perfect, and the data backs it up. This is the pivotal moment that determines a nurse's entire professional path. It
Right.
really shapes whether they develop deep roots and thrive, or if they experience burnout and just leave the profession entirely, often within that first year.
And our mission today is to cut right to the core of this challenge. We're doing a deep dive into some powerful 2025 research focused on exactly this, the integration and adaptation of new nurses.
Specifically, those with 2 years or less of experience.
Exactly.
We're pulling from a really comprehensive study
Mhm.
conducted in Quebec, Canada, that involved nearly 300 new nurses. And I think we all instinctively know that support matters when
Right.
the pressure's on, right?
Of course.
But what this research gives us is a highly detailed, evidence-based map. It shows the precise psychological mechanics, the levers and pulleys that translate supportive relationships into actual resilience and well-being.
So we're moving past just vague ideas of being supportive.
Yeah, way past that.
We're identifying the specific psychological ingredients you need to not just survive, but to actually love this incredibly demanding job. Okay, let's unpack this. Starting with the sheer scale of the environment these new nurses are walking into.
Well, first we have to acknowledge the baseline stress level. I mean, the study just confirms what we already suspect. The start of a nursing career is exceptionally difficult.
Why is that?
It's often due to these high daily demands that they just feel poorly prepared for.
And the numbers really bear that out, don't they? I mean, I can only imagine walking onto a floor where the average stress level is already so high.
It's incredibly high. The study found that nearly three-quarters of the sample, 73.4%, reported a stress level above or equal to the average.
Wow, so 3 out of every 4 new nurses are starting their shift already running hot.
Exactly. It's an environment of, chronic demand, staffing shortages, life or death decisions. So, given that, the researchers needed to know, how do we even measure successful adaptation?
What does success actually look like?
What does it look like when a new nurse is managing this environment effectively?
Good question. How did they define success in this study?
They looked at two key areas. The first is what they call occupational health.
Okay.
This is measured by positive and negative states. So the positive measure is vigor at work, that feeling of high energy, mental resilience,
Oh, good stuff.
the good stuff, yeah. The enthusiasm you have when you feel engaged. And then the negative measure is emotional exhaustion.
Hallmark of burnout.
That's it, that debilitating lack of energy and feeling of depletion.
So vigor is the fuel in the tank, and exhaustion is the warning light flashing on the dashboard.
That's a perfect way to put it. And the second area is occupational functioning.
Okay, so that's how they're actually performing.
It's more about how attached they are to the job itself. So it's measured by effective commitment, their positive emotional attachment to the nursing profession, and critically, occupational turnover intentions.
Ah, and that turnover intention, that's the real fear for the institutions, isn't it?
Absolutely. The source highlights something pretty shocking. Almost 50% of new nurses report intentions to leave their current job within the first year.
50%. That's an unsustainable talent hemorrhage.
It's a massive crisis. So if we can understand what prevents that desire to quit, we can solve a huge workforce problem.
And to solve it, the study frames the challenge within a specific psychological context. They follow a clear sequence rooted in self-determination theory, or SDT.
Right. It goes. Context needs resilience, adaptation.
And SDT is really the foundation for all of this.
It is, and it's relevant for every human endeavor, not just nursing. It basically states that for you to have optimal development and well-being, 3 fundamental psychological needs have to be satisfied.
Let's lay those out because their unique roles in this study are, well, that's where the breakthroughs are. What are the 3 needs?
Okay, so first is autonomy. This is the feeling that you're acting with ownership over your actions. You're psychologically free. You control how you approach your work.
So it's not just following orders.
No, it's not just blindly following orders. For a new nurse, this might be, having the freedom to organize their patient care schedule or choose the best approach to a complex problem.
So it's having agency, not just obedience.
Precisely.
Yeah,
The second need is competence.
right.
This is your core judgment about your own abilities. It's about feeling empowered, capable, and confident that when you try to do something, you'll get a positive result.
You feel like you know what you're doing, even when everything is chaotic.
Yes. And the third need is relatedness. This is the appreciation you get from your bonds with other people, that feeling of belonging, support, and just benefiting from positive, meaningful relationships.
Okay, so the goal is clear. The workplace needs to support all three of those needs. And that brings us to the crucial lever here, the quality of interpersonal relationships.
Right. How do you get those needs met in a chaotic hospital?
Exactly.
Well, the study focuses on the significant referent.
The what now?
The significant referent. It's often a formal mentor, or sometimes just an informal, experienced colleague. This person is hugely influential. They're the one who helps the new nurse navigate the culture.
The person who shows you the ropes.
Exactly. They establish a supportive, empowering, and safe environment.
And the findings here are essential starting point, right? The study strongly confirmed that having high-quality relationships with this mentor figure is positively associated with satisfying all three of those basic needs.
That's it. Autonomy, competence, and relatedness. All of them.
Wow.
These relationships act as a critical workplace resource. They support the new nurse's motivation, they help their development, and they build trust. Without that foundation of strong relationships, the whole model just falls apart.
So that mentor or referent is really the first point of intervention.
It is.
Okay, so now we get to the core mechanism, the real aha moment. Once those three needs are satisfied, how do they translate into actual success? This is where the concept of resilience comes in.
Right. And resilience, in this context, is seen as a psychological resource that can be actively developed. It's your internal capacity to strengthen your well-being and reduce distress when you face all those stressors.
So we're talking about adaptability, problem solving.
Adaptability, effective problem solving, and the confidence to cope with those really intense early career moments.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Because the relationships feed all three needs. You would expect all three of those needs to then feed resilience equally. But that's not what the study found.
Not at all. They found a highly specific and really unique connection. When they modeled the link between the three needs and resilience, they found that only the satisfaction of the need for competence is significantly linked to nursing resilience.
Wait, hold on. Let me make sure I understand that, because that just defies intuition.
I know.
If I feel totally supported by my team high relatedness, and I have a say in my patient's schedule high autonomy, that still doesn't help me bounce back from a terrible shift unless I felt competent while I was doing my job.
That is precisely what this model suggests for these first 2 years. Autonomy and relatedness were not confirmed to have a direct link to resilience itself.
So why? Why do you think competence takes the driver's seat here?
Well, the source suggests this finding aligns perfectly with a widely accepted theory from Patricia Benner on clinical expertise.
Okay.
The theory says that new nurses, those in the novice stage, are primarily focused on just acquiring skills and consolidating their professional competencies.
They're just trying to learn the job.
They're just trying to learn the job. So their ability to see themselves as successful and capable, their competence, is the specific psychological factor that fuels their internal capacity to cope and recover from stress. If you feel like a failure, no amount of social support can just instantly build that resilience buffer for you.
That makes a lot of sense. Survival demands mastery first. Okay, so we have the specific chain reaction. Positive relationships, A, competence, resilience. Now let's see the payoff. The study revealed two distinct pathways to adaptation.
Right, based on which psychological need is driving the action. And we can frame these outcomes pretty dramatically. Pathway 1 is the survival mechanism.
Okay.
It's about staying healthy and avoiding burnout. Pathway 2 is the love of the job mechanism. It's about developing deep commitment.
Let's start with pathway 1, the survival mechanism driven by competence and resilience.
So this pathway shows that competence and resilience work in sequence. They act as this crucial bridge between the supportive relationships and the actual health outcomes. When competence is high, resilience is high, and this dramatically influences the nurse's health.
And what are the resulting positive impacts on those health metrics we talked about?
Well, this chain reaction promotes their work vigor, so they have more energy and engagement. And critically, this mechanism acts as a robust protector against the bad stuff.
Ah, so it reduces the exhaustion.
It significantly reduces emotional exhaustion, and it drastically decreases occupational turnover and tensions.
So it keeps them from wanting to quit.
Exactly. Resilience is truly the psychological buffer that lets them absorb the stress of the job without crashing or quitting.
Okay, so pathway 1 keeps you physically and psychologically safe in the job. Now what about pathway 2? the love of the job mechanism.
This pathway deals primarily with effective commitment, that positive emotional attachment to the nursing profession. And what's intriguing is that resilience itself didn't significantly affect this love of the job.
It didn't. So what did?
Instead, the satisfaction of the need for autonomy emerged as the singular key factor here.
Now that is a critical nuance. So feeling capable makes you resilient and keeps you from quitting. But feeling free and autonomous is what makes you fall in love with the job.
That's it, exactly. When nurses feel they have ownership over their practice, they feel valued and they feel a psychological connection to the profession itself.
So it's the difference between just coping and actively loving your work.
It is. High-quality relationships support autonomy, and autonomy, in turn, is what helps explain that deep emotional attachment to nursing.
Which means that institutions really need to stop thinking about support as just this one big generic thing.
They do.
Their interventions have to be highly targeted.
That is the core practical implication. The study encourages healthcare institutions to actively strengthen harmonious, rewarding, and trusting relationships, because that's the foundation for everything else. But then they have to direct specific, evidence-based interventions toward those two key needs.
So give us some examples. How can an institution actually boost competence and autonomy based on these findings?
Okay, so to boost competence, they should implement structured programs that focus on clinical skill consolidation. Formal mentoring, critical reasoning training, or even creating simulation labs where new nurses can practice safely.
Yeah, a safe place to fail.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And to boost autonomy, they need to ensure nurses have choice and input. This could mean allowing freedom in how they organize their work, their methods, or just providing a space for feedback on how care is delivered without all the micromanagement.
Let's circle back to that third need for a second. Relatedness.
Mm-hmm.
High-quality relationships satisfy the need for relatedness, but then it seems to kind of fade into the background when it comes to the actual adaptation outcomes. Why the paradox?
It's a key nuance, and the researchers suggest a plausible explanation. While relatedness is satisfied by good relationships, it seems less inclined to be directly tied to occupational health outcomes during this initial phase.
So why is that?
Well, the idea is that new nurses, during this really intense transition, they prioritize demonstrating their professional development and competence above all else. They are laser-focused on proving their professional worth.
Which aligns with what the hospital expects of them.
It does. And so it might delay the deep integration of social norms. They're focused on mastery before connection. Even though the connection is supportive, it's a stage-dependent process.
So they're busy proving they deserve to be there, and competence is the currency of proof.
Precisely. Now, it is important to note, of course, that this study collected data at a single point in time. It's a cross-section, so we see these correlations. But future studies will need to confirm the model over a longer career path.
Right. So this deep dive has really shown us that positive relationships are not just a nice to have. They are the essential starting block. They feed these distinct psychological needs, competence and autonomy, which in turn drive the adaptive processes for both health and functioning.
And this research strongly validates the idea that the first 2 years of a nursing career are fundamentally about consolidating professional competencies. The fact that competence is the specific need that leads to resilience, it just strongly reinforces this stage-based theory of development.
So institutions need to stop treating new nurses like they're just mini veterans.
Yes, and accept that their primary psychological task is skill consolidation.
It does make you wonder, though, what happens after those first 2 intense years are done? Given that high-quality relationships satisfy all 3 basic needs, autonomy, competence, and relatedness, yet only competence and autonomy emerged as the strong drivers of adaptation in this early phase. What happens to the need for relatedness later in a nurse's career?
That's the open question this research raises, isn't it? Once a nurse is fully competent and feels autonomous, does the focus shift?
Does belonging become more important?
Exactly. Will addressing social integration and that need for deeper belonging become the critical factor in preventing burnout in, say, years 3 through 5. It's a fascinating area for leaders and for you, the learner, to explore on your own.
Definitely something to mull over as you navigate your own professional environment. Thank you for diving deep with us.